Okay, this is Tom Pingle here. I wanted to show you kind of an advanced lesson on how to create a visualization out of this stuff that I think blends blends a lot of the things we've been working with together. So here we go. We've got the slope shaded version of the LiDAR data for the area around Blacksburg. Here's the drill field, Main Street, and so on. What I want to do is build an Imhoff style map that's going to kind of work underneath it, and then ultimately in combination with this one. So I'm going to uncheck that for now and check the terrain layer. The very first thing that I'm going to want to do, so I just brought this in via the cloud dialog. The very first thing that I'm going to want to do is bring on those Imhoff style shadings. So I'm going to go back into what I had previously downloaded here. Oops. All right, here we go. And download and import this Imhoff style. That's going to give me access to different symbologies that I want. So for terrain, for instance, I wanted that to be mist. So you'll see that come in. I'm not going to need this base map anymore, so I'm going to let that go. Oops, lost my terrain layer. That's okay. We'll bring it back. So we'll go under map, add the data. This is just as well because we need a couple of layers here. So we go to all portal, terrain. We're looking for the imagery layer from Esri, so that is this one. You can tell because this is going to look like some hypsometric shading. All right, that'll take just a second to come in. We're going to move that underneath for now, and then we can change that color scheme back to mist. So again, essentially what we're just building is John Nelson's rendering of this. We need another base map. We're going to need we are going to need an imagery layer, so we'll go ahead and bring that in. That imagery is going to live underneath the terrain, so that'll be fine. And then the other two layers that we needed are going to be the multi-directional hillshade and the regular hillshade. So we'll start with the hillshade. Okay, that lives here. We want to style this with the color scheme, this kind of elaborate one here. And then we need one more. We need the multi-directional hillshade. And that's here. And we're going to apply a stretch to that, just like we were doing before, using this one. Okay, now if we zoom out on this, this will probably take a second to tile in here, but what we should see is a pretty nice rendering of the terrain. So here we go. This one in particular is probably needs to be scaled. The reason this isn't working is because this is set to 450 to 870. So we need to go in and make sure that we're changing this to maybe DRA, which is going to dynamically scale it according to the elevations that are in the window. So that should just take a second to come in as well. If we didn't have that elevation mist layer, this would probably look just fine, but it does look a little bit nicer with it. changes things from just a yellow color to kind of this green to yellow. Okay, so this is a pretty nice view, and in this we have our information here. So if we zoom in on this area, we'll have to see, the dynamic scaling is nice. It does make your computer work a little bit harder to try to get this stuff in here. The satellite imagery may also not be appropriate at this scale, but I think we're going to be able to make this make this work. Okay. Now the problem with this is that this completely covers up the layer that you're looking at. We can actually make one really simple modification to this color scheme by changing this from a solid white to a solid black, and instead going from essentially a 100% transparency to black. Now probably that's going to be a little bit too much and we're going to want to tinker with this, but let's start with that as a base. Now what that lets us do is essentially only the high slope values carry through, and then the low slope values are essentially entirely suppressed, and so we're not getting any sort of simple slope information from this, but what we are getting is all of the building outlines, all of the other feature maps and things like that. So it tends to look pretty good. If we zoom in here a little bit more, we'll be able to see the effect even more strongly. So we'll wait for this to clarify a little bit here. There we go. So we have this color information kind of showing up and giving us some sense of elevation. We've got the shading coming in from the terrain and from the multi-directional hillshade and the hillshade. And then we have feature information that's sort of stacking in from the LiDAR. So this is just an alternative. I think that this could probably be dressed up a little bit. When I had designed a visualization like this, I think I did it at a scale something a little more similar to that. So we would need the LiDAR data for the whole thing. But it tends to look really, really nice. This is probably a little bit too zoomed in, but I hope you can get the general idea. Anyway, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.